Ukrainian President Zelensky begging the West for help as Vladimir Putin wages a brutal war.
Do prove that you are with us. Do prove that you will not let us go. Do prove that you indeed are Europeans. And then life will win over death, and light will win over darkness.
Yeah, we carried that live. It kind of snuck up on us. It is an extremely emotional speech. He got a standing ovation at the end. And in the end, the EU voted, 667 voted for their of the 676 voters, 637 voted to put them in the European Union. And Zelensky actually went on today urging President Biden to send a strong, useful message to Russia tonight at the State of the Union. They talked for 30 minutes. The focus of President Biden's big speech now shifting as fighting in Ukraine gets more horrific. Biden will also lay out plans for the economy and COVID. I understand that in some ways, I think they're going to talk about how he brought the world together, Jesse, and it was his idea to call the EU and reconvene NATO and say sanctions are going to be necessary. But we'll wait to see what happens before I actually do anything.
Well, you're right. The Europeans did take the lead on the sanctions package. But there will be patriotism in the room tonight. You'll have people on both sides of the aisle rallying to defend Ukraine, rallying against Mother Russia, and that should happen, and that's a good thing. But with that said, this happened on Biden's watch, and the threat of sanctions did not deter Vladimir Putin, and now the American people are being hurt by this war. The Dow has lost about 3,000 points since the beginning of the year. It's almost off 10%. And gas prices are headed to $4 a gallon. And he can't come out and brag about the economy. He can't come out and say everything is great, because people are going to look at the guy and they're going to think, like, what country are you talking about? All of the wage gains got devoured by inflation. People are worse off now than they were before he came in. And he talks about job gains. These are jobs that weren't created. These are just added back after they got lost during COVID. So that's not going to fly. Speaking of COVID, he cannot come out and say he crushed COVID. Everybody got COVID. Herd immunity crushed COVID. I mean, yeah, he rolled out a bunch of shots. Okay, that was already teed up for him. So he better not try that. There is so much lingering resentment by parents for the fact that this guy and his people masked kids way beyond what was necessary. And the vax mandates hurt workers, got them fired, totally unnecessary. So that's what he has to say. He's going to ignore crime. He's going to tap dance around that, ignore the border. And I don't have high expectations for tonight. 140
million people got COVID. Harold, to you. So that's Jesse would say it's a big task for if Jesse had to write the speech for the President of the United States. What would you emphasize while not leaving reality tonight?
Well, I think the president has to be frank with the country. The state of our union is better than it was a year ago, but it remains unsettled. And inflation and crime, COVID, the border, all of those issues loom large and are incredibly important in everyday texture and everyday conversations in our country. But we would be kidding ourselves if we didn't recognize what we've been talking about on this show and your show, Brian, and across the network for many, many days now. The war in Ukraine, we've all been dragged into it, as President Zelensky has said. And it's caused us all to question how we choose to defend freedom, how we choose to defend independence. Now, the president shouldn't dwell on this and shouldn't make this the entire speech. But he certainly should talk about this issue in a way that demonstrates to Americans that when we unite, when we rally around a cause as Americans, despite our differences, despite the things we may have massive disagreements about, we agree on freedom and independence and democracy, and it's under attack now. It is even under attack in our own homeland as we think about how we're going to address certain issues. If I were the president, I'd call on Democrats and Republicans to push a reset together. And all the things we've seen over the last week should make us all as Americans want to do what's right for every middle-class American, every parent, every neighborhood, every community. I don't care what the color, what the racial background, the economic background might be. I hope the president asks Democrats and Republicans alike to push the reset, and let's do our very best to advance a foreign policy that protects us and advance an economic plan in the country that enables and empowers every single American. That's what I'd do if I were him.
Could this be a unifying moment? Harold, well said. Judge,
Not a
Could it
chance.
happen?
Not a chance. This is a president who came in and said he was going to unify. He hasn't done anything to unify. And you know what, Harold, with all due respect, I have to disagree with you. I mean, we are so much worse off than we were a year ago. A year ago, we were a net exporter of energy. A year ago, gas prices weren't what they are now. A year ago, inflation wasn't what it is now. A year ago, we didn't have the crime problem that we have now and the immigration problem. Let me tell you what the guy ought to do. What he's going to do what he ought to do. What he's going to do is he's not going to talk about Build Back Better because he knows that's got a negative connotation.
He'll mention it, though.
He's not going to mention it. He's not going to mention inflation because he knows that people understand what that means and it was transitory anyway. And so maybe he doesn't understand it himself. But the problem is what I want to know from him is why is the energy sector exempt from the sanctions? Why are we essentially funding the Russian war on Ukraine? Stop with this nonsense of, oh, this is an attack against democracy. I'm tired of words. I'm tired of words that are meaningless. Attack against democracy is under attack. I'm tired of hearing it. We are funding the war in Russia. And today or yesterday, Jen Psaki and today Senator Warner, a Democrat, both said, well, if we can't turn on the Keystone Pipeline, it'll take years before we see the benefits of that. Hogwash. Last year, we saw the benefits of being independent and with our own energy. So stop with the nonsense and give us a straight talk, and he won't do it.
Right. So Judge has a different take. I'm going to watch the show back and get clear how they disseminate it. And I thought I'd broken this up different now. So, Dana, you have the job to put this speech together. But Joe Manchin kind of gave you a clue, and so maybe Harold Ford did too. Joe Manchin came out and said, let's stop buying Russian oil and gas and let's start producing our own. And I believe he's still a Democrat.
I think, well, he is, and I think that's also one of the reasons you probably won't hear a lot. If he does say Build Back Better, I'd be surprised. But I think we haven't mentioned one thing, which is that polls from ABC News and CBS News this week have shown the president at about a 38% approval rating. That is a really negative territory for a president to go in to a State of the Union in which that speech is supposed to talk about all of your accomplishments. And he's going to be looking for a big applause line and standing ovations. But you know where he's going to get them is at the front end of the speech when he talks about Ukraine. He has a lot of things he's going to want to get to. Ketanji Brown Jackson is a Supreme Court nominee. She will be there, and it will be a big moment. That's a historical nomination, and she will have her chance to get applause and the support from the Democrats as she begins to have her hearings, and hopefully, from her point of view, she'll try to win some of the Republicans over as well. And he's going to try to talk about a lot of things in here. Nobody wants to hear about climate change and the Green New Deal, but believe me, they're going to talk about it. And it's going to be hard to hold people's attention, I believe, because the speech, it takes months to put together, and then you have something like Ukraine upend all of it, and everyone across the government is trying to get their pet project mentioned. In fact, I noticed that the Department of Interior, the secretary there, Deb Haaland, she put out a long statement yesterday about how important it is that we deal with climate change. Okay, fine, I agree. It's not an unimportant issue, but you have to have some sort of an off-ramp for people. You cannot imagine how focused the American people are now on energy policy and what's that's doing to inflation. The other thing is he's going to want to talk about the American Rescue Plan. He sees that as a great accomplishment. But what Americans have done, in the majority of them, has connected the extra money going into the system that helped raise prices on everything else. So a lot of the things that he would want to talk about as accomplishments are vulnerabilities, except perhaps the infrastructure bill.
Right. And don't forget, you have a rebuttal, and then you have a rebuttal to the rebuttal. Rashida Tlaib is going to come out and is going to call out her president. I've never seen anything like it. This guy, Congressman Gottlieb, said it's like keying your own car and slashing your own tires. It's going to be an interesting post-game show.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.